Welcome back to painting class. We are working with our acrylic paint this week, and so far this week we have been working primarily on this idea that acrylic paint really needs to be blended inside the painting, so working so that the paint is wet and that you can change or alter either color itself or value inside your painting or on your sheet. So we also talked about that because acrylic paint sort of is inherently darker than watercolor. I just don't buy black paint, and you do just need to mix your own dark neutral, which is why I had you use the warm colors in a color blend wheel. And you can see that I make something that would be usable as a black paint right here with my warm blue and my warm red, and you can see that here. We then practiced with that black, working with the idea of value, making sure that we were darkening white instead of trying to lighten a color, because white doesn't have a lot of pigment, and so just like yellow, it really doesn't have a lot of power to change another color. Today, we are going to work with this concept of value and making our paint appear to be an object that is three-dimensional. So yesterday I passed out this little sheet with the sphere, and that is what I recommend that you start with today. Over on the counter, if you are successful and you can make your little sphere look three-dimensional and like it has solid edges and all that good stuff. Today, after practicing maybe twice, if this feels good to you, over on the counter, you can expand your practice to one of these other forms. You maybe have a sheet that looks like this from earlier, because we did do these in watercolor earlier in the term, but there are fresh ones on the counter if you need those. So that just kind of gives you some extended practice today, but we are going to go ahead and start with the sphere. You can trace a circle. You don't want them to get too big. Like I should be able to fit like 3 or 4 on my page. I don't need them to become like gigantic. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a sphere using my pencil. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a cast shadow under that sphere. When I do this, I am looking at my like reference picture. I'm going to give it a little bit of a wall and a table back there so that my little painting looks just like this painting in the picture. The thing that I notice as I'm drawing this is like that those value shapes have kind of that half moon, and they wrap up around the sphere. So if I think about kind of identifying where my values are going to change here on my painting, they are going to stay spherical in nature. Like we talk about value matching form. So this bottom edge of my sphere will match these shadow shapes as this wraps up and into my object. So if you find this idea helpful, you certainly can do that, because remember our acrylic paint will cover over everything. It's opaque, not like watercolor where everything was kind of transparent. So here is what I'm gonna do now. I need to just decide what color my sphere is gonna be. And I'm going to begin. There are kind of a couple of different ways I can approach the beginning. You'll notice that I'm going to look at my little reference sphere the entire time that I'm working. So I'm sort of arranging my workspace so that my reference photo is easily visible, and my object is visible, both. And I want them to be close to each other so that I can like look back and forth as I'm painting. Get this little extra piece out of the way here. So I simply need to just decide what color I'm going to make my sphere be. I can choose whatever color I like. It doesn't matter. And then if we think back to like watercolor, we talked a lot about the color pairs that will neutralize each other or make one another be darker. And so I kind of want to think about that too while I'm working. So thinking about remembering back to those conversations, right? Because we don't have black paint and we don't always need black paint. So if I want a yellow sphere, I'm going to darken it with purple. If I want an orange sphere, I'm going to darken it with blue. If I want a red sphere, I'm going to darken with green. And when we think about acrylic paint, if I want a blue sphere, I probably don't need to darken it at all because the paint itself is so incredibly dark. So I'm going to first kind of mix up a purple paint that I can use to kind of make my, so if I'm thinking about making a yellow sphere happen, so I've mixed up this purple and it is a very, very dark purple. So I know I'm not gonna need very much of it. I'm kind of cleaning my paintbrush off. And I'm gonna show you just what happens when I mix that purple in. So if I imagine that I wanna make a yellow sphere, right? So if we imagine this is yellow, my yellowiest bit is gonna be kind of here through the middle. And notice when I'm painting now, I'm painting so that my brush strokes kind of wrap themselves around this object. I can't make a round feeling object without making my paintbrush strokes go round. So now I'm just gonna add in like the littlest bit, like the tiniest little corner of that purple paint that I made, and you can see that it made my yellow darker. And so I can begin that process of kind of wrapping my value down onto the sphere. And now I'm gonna add just a little bit more of that purple into my yellow, and you will see that it gets darker again. If, just like when we were working in watercolor, if I were to use black, because black has so much blue pigment in it, it just makes my yellow be green, not darker. So we want to think about using those complementary color pairs. And then because we're using acrylic paint now too, notice how I'm using my paintbrush to curve around that object. And this is just a combination of yellow and purple. I can go ahead and just use the purple paint that I made to make this object's cast shadow. Oops, I overpainted that a little bit. So I'm continuing to use just the color that I've used for the whole painting. I'm gonna mix a little bit of that up and into my object just to make that bottom edge just a little bit darker than it was before. I'm gonna clean my paintbrush up now. And I can see that I've got the dark part pretty good. Clean my paintbrush, I squeezed it dry, and now I'm going to grab some fresh yellow paint just to sort of mix in here. I now need to blend this a little. So I'm trying to blend this color together a little bit here while those dark sections are still a little wet. Notice again that I'm wrapping my brush strokes around that object. Now I need to like work with the lighter section, and remember we talked about that white paint doesn't lighten or darken color very well, so I'm gonna go ahead and just start with white, and I'm gonna put my white here in the center where I know it's got a highlight. And now I can blend in some yellow, and you'll see even yellow kind of takes over my white paint. So I'm gonna have to clean my paintbrush out now and squeeze it dry again and blend this kind of more completely together. So you do have to work fast enough that your paint stays wet on the surface to be able to blend. I'm blending in a way that I'm using kind of short brush strokes that wrap themselves around this spherical object so that I'm not making any flat or straight marks on my painting. And you can see I went ahead and like all of that white is gone. This white has less power even than yellow. So I'm adding just a little bit more white. When I see that my one color is taking over another and I just want to blend them together on my sheet, I'm always reverting back to a clean, dry paintbrush. So I clean my paintbrush out again. And because my paint is still wet, I get the capability to kind of blend that together. I can use my orange plastic to kind of check my work and make sure that my object feels about right. And then I can also go ahead and reuse some of this background color, and I can go ahead and I can make a background happen. There are a couple of different ways to do background. I like to kind of use some brushy kind of marks. Thinking about trying to make that space feel vertical, right? So I added a little white just to lighten it up over here. Probably added too much white, so I'm gonna grab some more of my purple paint. I could paint the background first, and sometimes I do like to paint the background first, but if I paint the background last, like there's just a either philosophy kind of works. I have to be careful now with the edge of my object when I'm pushing in my background so that I don't paint over the edge. So you can attempt either way, painting the object first or painting the little bit of background first. But you can see I can go ahead and I'm working this little bit of background in. Probably could still use the tiniest bit more paint. And because I've used those complementary colors, my little sphere here is gonna just pop right off the page. And you see that happening. I'm gonna go ahead and mix a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow into my purple for my table. And with my table here now, I'm gonna try to go sideways. Oops. I can see that that's a darker color than I wanted, so I'm cleaning my paintbrush out again, squeezing it dry. I'm going to come back with just some white paint mixed into that first color. I do want to use brush strokes that go sideways on my table so that like visually my table feels like it is an object that goes sideways. I also want to think about integrating this kind of shadow shape into the table itself. The shadow under the object shouldn't be a different color than the table. It should just be a lighter version of the table color. or a darker version of the table color, sorry. But this is what you're gonna work with today. It might take you, like I said, a couple of practices. If you try this sphere and you get the sphere right away, like go ahead and work with the other basic shapes. And we're thinking about using these complementary color combinations to make our objects feel three-dimensional.